Hello, delicious internet friends. How are you?
So today's topic is going to be on a more dark, I guess, topic of Gamergate.
Yeah, we're getting serious here, because I'm not sure if you've noticed, but in the last 2 months, the internet's kind of exploded.
For the worse, not in a good way.
Yeah, in the super, super awful, bad death way.
So I guess we'll get into how did Gamergate begin, I guess. We'll do a little bit about that.
Yeah, I guess. Um, yeah. So, when did this started in July, right? Mid-July, about?
Yeah, it actually started on no, it was actually later than that.
Really?
Yeah, it was only in September. So
Okay, are we talking about uh, how far
I'm
back
t-
are we going?
I'm actually starting with the 4chan. I don't know much about it previous to that.
Uh,
So if you can shed any light on anything you know before September, that'd be great.
I can do that indeed, actually. So I actually caught on to this about um, a couple days in because it started on. I actually think I heard about this through Jacob, but it started like on Twitter in August, late July, I think. It's been a few months, so my memory is a little hazy on the exact starting date. But what happened is there was a rather large Tumblr post by a person whose name escapes me. Let me look it up real quick so I can so guilty parties can not be uh, excused. This is excellent listening.
Was it Greg Costigan?
Um, crap, I can't remember his name. But an ex-boyfriend of Zoe Quinn's. For those of you who don't know, Zoe Quinn is a game developer and maker, and she does stuff on the internet with code and circuit boards and things. Um, but she's also known for being generally a fairly outspoken feminist and about challenging games portrayals of women and minorities.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but in any case, this ex-boyfriend of hers posted a rather extremely long uh, screed about the end of their relationship, uh, and I will not go into the gory details because I feel that that's inappropriate and that it's gossipy bullshit. The only reason this mattered is that allegedly she slept with um, several members of the games industry, and people interpreted this as an attempt to
Well,
forward
I
her
know I
career.
know a lot of
And
this started around the time that she was releasing an equally touchy game called Depression Quest.
actually, Depression Quest has been, I think it's been around for a while. It's been around for months, actually. I think she had posted the web version of it
Mm-hmm.
recently, and had posted for free, and she had posted for free at A, because she felt it was important, and B, like it was around the time of the Robin Williams death thing, and she felt that it was important to highlight issues of depression and how they affect people because we lost Robin Williams to depression, and that was very sad.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and a lot of people on the internet who had already kind of taken issue with her advocating for greater social justice in games, kind of used this as an opportunity to attack her, and claim that she was manipulating games media in an effort to promote a agenda, massive finger quotes. And out of this out of the early weeks of this, a lot of games publications refused to talk about it because it was TMZ bullshit. And this was taken by those people who objected to Zoe Quinn specifically, and more broadly, the idea that there was anything wrong with gaming and that social justice issues did need to be addressed. They took this as proof that there was some great conspiracy in the games industry to silence their voice, and that somehow talking about just social justice and being critical of games, not hating games, but saying like, oh, this game is problematic in X, Y, or Z ways, was somehow bad for the games industry. And it spiraled from there, because in the same week, someone called in a bomb threat on a plane because a Sony executive was on it. Anita Sarkeesian, who
before we actually get to that, before we actually bring up Anita Sarkeesian, because that's another topic I want to get to.
Sure.
But we can see that this group, this Gamergate group, was created for the intention of harassing and subjugating women in the gaming industry.
Yes, specifically Zoe Quinn, but more broadly, yeah, it was designed to target anyone, particularly women, who spoke out against or spoke out for greater social justice in games.
Now we can see that there have been Twitter posts and videos. There was recently a video in the Huffington Post about people who are defending the Gamergate hashtag or the Gamergate group because they believe that it was created to be a platform for defending ethics in journalism, and that it was going to be this big thing about how they believed, or the people in the group believed, that it was going to become this thing where it actually advocated for women and protected women. So it's just interesting to see how this group that was originally created to be offensive and to be critical of women is being defended by women and men as well as something that's supposed to promote women in the gaming industry.
And that's absolutely accurate. Like even before this movement was called Gamergate, it was strongly motivated by that desire to silence a certain strain of thought, and that's been heavily obfuscated, I think, generally by the efforts of a lot of the people who were originally involved in harassing Zoe Quinn. And just to make perfectly clear what I mean by harassment, I mean death threats, rape threats, personal threats to family members, posting her personal information, including her home address and the home address of family members online, calling her home and cell phones nonstop for the last 2 months, and generally harassing past and current employers. When I say harassment, what I'm really talking about is a form of terrorism.
Right. So we see that this harassment and this form of terrorism is going on, but according to what I've read and what I've seen, a lot of the media seems to think that Gamergate is broken up into two groups, which is traditionalists, which is basically males who think that the gaming industry should remain as it is, male-dominated, and in the traditional style of not of not allowing women in video games to become main characters or to have a main role in games other than be the tragic princess or something like that. But then they say it's also broken into a second group, which is of feminists, people who believe that women should be shown positively in the video game industry and in video games, but I don't seem to be seeing any of this positivity or any type of promotion towards women in Gamersgate, or I mean in Gamergate. So what do you think about this? Do you think that there are members of this group, or why are they not making themselves known, you know?
I think, and I don't know, like, I don't know how close to this you've been. I kind of got a lot of this early on because I kind of follow a lot of people on Twitter who, by kind of like the accident of fate, wound up a lot on the, I would guess, say, front line of this. So my opinion is pretty colored.
Mm-hmm.
By what I've seen over the last 2 months, but from what I've seen in the last 2 months and from people I've talked to, that Gamergate does have a faction of people who genuinely care about journalistic integrity and ethics. I do not think I think those people are intensely misguided, and that they are sheltering a large, festering kind of, that they act functionally as a screen for what is a huge faction of deeply misogynistic people, and that the culture within like the environment that Gamergate has fostered, where people who advocate for certain political stances in games are enemies of gaming, fosters an environment that leads to not only just legitimizing misogynist, homophobic, racist, and all sorts of other awful intents, but that also fosters an environment where genuinely disturbed people who feel that it is okay to use threats of violence and verbal harassment as a way of silencing dissent. It allows that the Gamergate has kind of fostered an environment where it allows those people to thrive.
Right. So you had brought up Anita Sarkeesian,
Yes.
Which was when we talk about Gamergate, that was the first time I had actually heard about Gamergate and what was going on. And the first thing I thought about was, Anita Sarkeesian, even before Gamergate, was not getting positive feedback from the gamer communities, particularly males, about what she was saying about, the women tropes and women in video games. And now to have her life threatened just because she was speaking out about positivity in women games is frightening. And she's not the only major woman in video games now who's being threatened. Brianna Wu is another example of this. And I just being a woman myself who plays video games and who's interested in video game journalism, this makes it difficult to even take a step forward. It's such a step back in everything that we've seen, women do in video games. It's just, and it happened all in just a few months.
Yeah.
And what does that say about the video game community, and what does that say about what we've been doing for the past decade?
And I like to think I like to think that Gamergate represents a vocal and toxic minority in the community, but in much the same way that Gamergate fosters an environment where it's okay to be completely awful, and it fosters a hate group basically. I feel like the games industry and its sort of laissez-faire attitude to portrayals of particularly women, but broadly like uh, minorities and disadvantaged people has kind of created an environment where it allows something like Gamergate to occur.
Kind of seen groups, over the years built on harassment and built on, hacktivism, which um, is hacking as a form of activism. We've seen this through groups like, Anonymous was a big one. And we've seen these die out, in the past few years. But now with the rising of this new group, how quickly is it going to take for a group like this to, fade away? And what will be we have to think about what will be the consequences of them existing, and what impact will they have on our community.
Yeah, and that's what's truly disturbing to me, is that it's the fact that already they've already driven public figures out of the industry, and they're making it more toxic for people who may have games that are valuable to make, or may have critiques that are valuable to push our industry forward and push everything we do forward and make better games and make the community a better place to be for everyone. They're making it an environment where it's harder for them to work and it's harder for them to do anything. And what's even more disturbing for me is that the games media in particular has been not very good about standing up against this.
Mm-hmm. And it's not just the gaming industry that hasn't been very hasn't been a positive participant in this. Going back to the Anita Sarkeesian example, the police at the college wouldn't even help her with security during the event, and even we look back at the original Gamergate Twitter hashtags, and male celebrities like Adam Baldwin were promoting
in fact,
Gamergate.
He was the person to coin the term Gamergate for what at the time was just a formless mass of rage and harassment.
So it's just so sad and quite honestly terrifying about how far it's reached. It's not just affecting the gamer community anymore. It's reaching out into the film and TV platform and into politics and so it's becoming a lot larger, and it's amassing more quickly than I thought that I could ever thought that something like this would have.
And what surprised me in the life cycle of this was there was a point 3 weeks in where apparently Zoe Quinn had been lurking in 4chan IRCs, where and at the time the people were complaining it was a big Zoe Quinn conspiracy to corrupt media, some insane bullshit. It turned out that a lot of the 4chan community members on this IRC had been orchestrating a lot of the harassment intentionally to drive what they termed social justice warriors out of the industry. And at that point, I remember specifically at that moment, I was like, good, this is done. No one's going to continue to believe this anymore. And now we're we're 6 weeks later or more, and it's still going. And just to clarify what you meant about the college thing, what happened for those who don't know is Ms. Sarkeesian was going to speak at UCU. It's a college in Utah. I don't know what UCU actually stands for. And someone threatened the school with a school shooting. They called in a school shooting threat, and the police did nothing about the security issue. So
They basically said they had, pistols and grenades, and that they were going to cause a massacre at the event if it were to take place.
yeah, and the police did nothing. So Anita Sarkeesian basically said, "I'm not going to speak because it's ridiculous that the police would kind of validate this behavior by not considering it a safety risk."
Mm-hmm. Now, I actually saw some interesting interviews recently. I'm going to go back to a comment in the Huffington Post blog, and there was a quote where a gamer by the name of Gemma Morgan basically says that this isn't about misogyny, and that it's more about ethics journalism, and that when reviewers look at games, they shouldn't look at it with a viewpoint of I don't like this game because it's sexist. They shouldn't look at these games with ideals. And that is just basically pushing everything that Gamergate is promoting.
Yeah, and this is the thing that really here's where I'm gonna say some things, but what I think, and this is what I think about like a lot of the people who are finger quotes the moderates in Gamergate. I think a lot of them genuinely do care about games ethics, but I think a lot of them hold belief that there's some kind of objective neutral in our society, and that somehow you can view games neutrally, like that there's no political context to them, and that is fundamentally untrue.
That's untrue because even if they aren't, even if the person, consciously doesn't mean to put in that kind of, political standpoint or idealism into the game, it's still there. It still exists.
And even if they somehow manage to even if they make something that's seemingly innocuous, like Bejeweled, or something, even if they make a purely mechanics-based game, like what is it, 2164 or something like that, those games occur in a broader context. They occur in a world where maybe that indie developer is limited by their economic situation at the time into developing the game with all the features they want, or because the marketing staff at the publisher that they work for wants the game to appeal to a certain demographic, so changes are made.
Like with Assassin's Creed, I think it was, they could have put, I forget who said it, I have to look it up, but there was somebody working on Assassin's Creed who said it would be just as easy to take the male model and make a female character, but the company was saying it wouldn't be easy, and that's just one of the ways it's trying to appeal to, one demographic or one sex.
And this is like how clearly all games have political context, but what really frustrated me is I was actually talking to, I had a couple points I made an effort to talk to some people in Gamergate through Twitter, one of whom I was, in fairness to them, I was not so much talking to them as being snarky and glib at them, but this person said, "Oh, games don't have political context," and I'm like, really? because Bioshock, from 2004, 2006, Fallout from the 90s, uh, Tetris, and Missile Command all had like deeply political themes. Tetris, about building a wall in the Soviet Union that seems to fall apart, and your just job is to still continue to build that wall, even though it disappears as you watch. Missile Command, about a futile attempt to save cities from nuclear apocalypse. Fallout, about a post-apocalyptic America, that and the kind of weird politics around a pseudo-fascist post-apocalyptic American government. Uh, Bioshock, the collapse of a objectivist society.
I don't want to cut you off because you're making a really interesting point, but we're actually hitting the half-hour mark. So I think this is a good place to wrap up. So we can continue, this conversation in another podcast, but I think the best way to continue is, main points, Gamergate. It started as a harassment. It's moved towards terrorism. Terrorism. What are going to be the after effects, and how is this affecting people now? Do you think that's a good place to, end it?
Yeah, I think that's a good place to wrap it up, because I don't know about you, but I could talk about this until the sun came up and went down and came back up again.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
So I hope you all enjoyed this riveting conversation.
Yeah, and please.
I know I did.
Yeah, good times. And please, if you ever find yourself wondering about this kind of thing, please, please, please err on the side of making video games a more welcoming and awesome place to be for everybody.
All right. See you guys next time.
Goodbye.